All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting of the Finance Committee to order, please. Doug, are there any public speakers?
Yes, sir. We have two public speakers today. The first one being Murray Bowden.
Morning. This is particularly difficult to do. You've invested many millions of dollars in positive train control. It's been a mandate for what, 10 years? And the problem is it's no longer relevant nor usable. And funding should stop immediately. I will be presenting the information that the systems such as Mobileye, which is what's on some of your buses and 1,500 or 4,000 taxi cabs, and which tells you if something is in front of the train and stops it. By the way, Mitch, that accident that happened with the work train would not have happened if it had a system like Mobileye in front of it, which would have stopped the train. Burlington Northern has something like 32,000 miles of railroad track. That system where it would stop automatically like on my car is effective on the whole 32,000 miles of track. Every mile of railroad track in New York State would be made much safer if that type of system was installed in the trains. Stops the train when something is ahead, abnormality of any sort. And the financial savings, one, in installation, two, in maintenance. It works on all autonomous cars. These cars drive themselves. How can they do it? And why doesn't MTA adopt that information to the cabs of your trains? The number of miles of track that you have is minuscule compared to what they've already done for the United States. Been done by Waze, been done by Google, been done by here. The database is already there. All you have to do is add. In Scandinavia, they have it on the Volvo that if there's a moose in front of the car stops. How do you stop a system that you've invested so many millions and billions of dollars in? I have no answer for that. But I would like you to stop funding any PTC except what's in the cab of the engines. And if you would like a fuller explanation from me, I'll be glad to meet with you anytime, anywhere. Today's been a spectacularly good day. I've spoken to a lot of people, and a lot of things happened that never happened before. MTA moved forward significantly today. Significantly. It is very difficult to change systems that have been in place for 20, 30, 40, 100 years. But steps have been taken today to change those systems. You should be aware that there are people to move this organization forward. It's been a pleasure to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bowden. Next up is Jason Pinero. Okay, that concludes our public speakers.
Thank you, Doug. Next, we have the approval of the February 21st minutes. And may I have, please have a motion and a second?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Doug, can you take us through the work plan?
We have no changes to the work plan. So the next item is Budget Watch. This month's Budget Watch, we're going to focus on February operating results and subsidy cash results through March. I'm going to start with operating results for February. Passenger revenues were $7.6 million below budget in the month of February, which increased the unfavorable year-to-date variance to $14 million. This was mainly the result of lower subway and bus ridership And as was reported at the transit meeting earlier, a lot of that had to do with adverse weather impacts in January and February. In the case of the commuters, those are virtually on target. And as also was reported at the Bridges and Tunnels meeting today, toll revenue continues to perform well. We had positive results in February, which increased the year-to-date variance to $8.4 million, which was 3.2% favorable. This time of year, early in the year, expenses can be not that useful in order to study, but we are favorable, $21 million in the month of February. Year-to-date, that's $39 million favorable, or 1.9%. Again, a lot of that is timing related. We'll probably see some of those expenses hit later in the year. Moving to debt service costs, those were favorable for the month and year-to-date due to lower rates and the timing of debt service deposits. I'm going to move to subsidies right now. In Budget Watch, we reported combined subsidies as being unfavorable by $61 million through March. But I want to point out, it's very important to point out that $58 million of that variance was due to the timing of when the state cut off, when they validate and certify the PMT numbers at the end of their fiscal year. So while we're saying 61 was unfavorable, 58 of that is really timing, and we would expect to receive that next month. So in fact, PMT results are actually $30 million favorable year-to-date when you make that adjustment. Real estate transaction tax collections, we've had 2 months in a row that have been not very favorable. We had a positive January, which was $31 million favorable, but then in February we're $18 million unfavorable, and March $39 million unfavorable. So year-to-date we're about $25 million unfavorable in that category. So to conclude and to try to summarize, all of these results, the net operating results have been positive, where we've had favorable toll revenue, expense, and debt service, which more than offset the lower passenger revenue we spoke about. Subsidies really are a wash. We have favorable PMT when we adjust for timing. Again, though, we have the lower real estate taxes. So overall, we're unfavorable for the month, but still favorable year-to-date. The only concern, and we're going to be looking at it, is to look at the real estate revenues. And while we're favorable year-to-date, if that were to continue to perform under budget, there would be the risk of our results turning negative. Any questions?
So just a clarification, for the month of March, what was the decreased revenue for real estate?
$39 million combined, MRT and urban tax combined for the month. So we're now $25 million unfavorable year-to-date.
Thank you.
Okay. Want to keep going, Doug?
Pat McCoy is going to take us through Finance Watch.
Okay. Good afternoon. Finance Watch appears on page 20 of Director's Desk today. Just a couple transactions to report. The first is the MTA Dedicated Tax Fund Bonds 2017A. I covered this at the last meeting, but just to recap, this was a $350 million issuance that cost all-in true interest cost of 3.97%. Moving on, we just completed on March 9th the MTA Transportation Revenue Green Bonds 2017A transaction. This was $326 million of Green Bonds 2017As. It combined a takeout of a note that was coming due together with a refunding component. As you can see on the following page, the refunding generated present value savings of $16.5 million, or 10.3% of the refunded bonds. So we were pleased to be able to take these refunding savings off the table. As you can see here, the bond issuance fee was waived on the refunding component of the transaction. And again, the all-in TIC on this one was similar, 3.97% across both subseries of the deal. And this was senior managed by Jeffries together with Drexel Hamilton, a service-disabled veteran-owned firm, Stern Brothers, a woman-owned firm, and Cabrera Capital Markets, a minority-owned firm. Upcoming, we have a $100 million transportation revenue variable rate refunding, remarketing. The current interest rate period will expire by its terms. This is a floating rate note, and so we'll go back into the market and reset that variable rate. And we're currently scheduled to do that in the coming couple weeks. Lastly, we have a fuel hedge to report that was bid out competitively on February 28th. This was 2.9 million gallons of ULSD, and this was won by Cargill at an all-in price of $1.68 per gallon. And again, all of our other counterparties bid on this as well. So that concludes Finance Watch.
Okay, we're going to move to headquarter and all agency items. We have one action item, that being the all agency annual procurement report. This action item is to authorize the filing with the State of New York, the annual MTA all agency procurement report for the period January 1, 2016 to December 31st, 2016, as required under Section 2879 of the State Public Authorities Law. This report is on Director's Desk, Document Center, and can be found on the MTA website at mta.info.
Any questions? Motion? Second? All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, Doug?
Thank you. We have two headquarter report and information items. The first being the MTA Prompt Payment Annual Report for 2016. This report reviews MTA-wide success in meeting mandated prompt payment deadlines, including the interest penalties incurred as a result of late payment. In 2016, the MTA, on an agency-wide basis, paid a total of $57.5 thousand in interest on total invoice value paid of $10.8 billion. This is an 8.7% decrease in the amount of prompt payment interest compared to the 2015 amount paid. Okay, the second information item, contract change order report for the fourth quarter of 2016, which reports on those change orders with values between $250,000 and $750,000. Those contracts with larger values are captured within monthly procurement packages. No questions on that. So we have Weil Hibry, who's going to talk about headquarter and agency procurements.
Thank you, Doug. For headquarters, we have 14 competitive procurements for personal service miscellaneous contracts for a grand total of $120 million, $277 and $484. Those are on pages 44 to 53 of your board book. For the record, the Willis Towers Watson procurement should read Willis of New York. I'd like to bring to the attention of the Finance Committee a significant procurement we have in your board books. We have a staff summary on page 52 for dental benefits for $97 million. We recommend that the Finance Committee approve an amendment to a previously board-approved, competitively negotiated all-agency personal services contract with MetLife to provide dental benefits to non-represented employees and certain represented and retired employees, a total of 31,300 employees. This modification amends to retroactively extend the contract for 3 years from January 1, 2017, for a value of $97.1 million. This extension will enable the MTA to prepare to implement a self-insured dental plan, assess the need for internal MTA administrative resources to manage the self-insured plan, and prepare and execute a full request for proposals as such. The original MetLife 3-year proposal was $102.9 million, which was negotiated down to $97.1 million. As a result of negotiations, the MTA will realize projected savings of $5.8 million over a 3-year period compared to the original MetLife proposal. When compared to previous contract spend, the MTA will realize a reduction of $18.1 million over 3 years. Savings come from adjustments to the loss ratio that more accurately reflect claims history of the MTA population. And the loss ratio is simply the difference between claims and premiums. As part of the extension, the MTA will require MetLife to cover a dental claims operational audit conducted by a benefits consultant at a cost of $35,000 to $40,000. This will help ensure that MetLife premium is a fair representation of the actual cost of the claims. MetLife agreed to return portions of the premium based on a mutually agreed formula tied to a standard loss ratio as a means to further adjust premium levels in the event that the experience is favorable during the performance period.
Mr. Merdler?
And I'd like to be recused on the OSIP and broker service side.
Okay. Any other questions? Motion? Second? All those in favor? Opposed?
For Metro North, there are no items. There are no items also for Long Island Railroad. For New York City Transit MTA bus operations, there are 4 procurements for a grand total of $495,326,676. One is a non-competitive procurement for $1,423,888 to request ratification of the declaration of an immediate operating need for ultrasonic rail flow detection services.
Any questions? Motion? Second? All those in favor? Opposed?
There are 3 competitive procurements for a total of $493,902,000. One to award a contract to Judlow TC Electric JV. One for a modification for a continued technical support during the construction phase of the communications-based train control system implementation on the Flushing line, and another to use the RFP process for a fleet purchase, vendor and amount to be determined.
Mr. Merdler?
Mr. Chairman, rather than take your time, I'd like the record to reflect that I adopt the comments I made concerning the Judlow contracts in the prior committee meeting.
And I'd like to abstain only from the Judlow-Canarsie Tunnel contract.
Any other questions? Motion? Second? All those opposed? All those in favor? That was a Freudian slip. Opposed? We have 1 abstention recorded. Thank you.
Next is bridges and tunnels. There are 5 competitive procurements for a grand total of $124,126,000. 4 are extension modifications to existing agreements, and 1 is to use the RFP process for design-build services for the rehabilitation of the Henry Hudson Bridge.
Any questions? Motion? Second? All those in favor? Opposed?
There are no items for FEMTAC. This concludes the procurements section. Now to Doug.
Thanks. I just want to point out that between pages 72 and 123 are the MTA consolidated financial and operational reports. And Jeff Rosen is next with the real estate section of the report.
Okay, thanks, Doug. I also have some housekeeping. Every March, we ask you to adopt our all-agency real property and personal property disposition guidelines as required by the Public Authorities Law, sections 2895 through 2897. Those guidelines are available on Director's desk. They are substantially unchanged from last year. Unless there are any questions, I'd ask you, I guess, to go ahead and approve that.
We have a second? All those in favor? Opposed?
Thanks. Secondly, MTA IT is proposing to exercise an option under our contracts with Transit Wireless to avail itself of dark fiber and associated services in furtherance of various MTIT initiatives. This is described in the staff summary, but if you have any questions, Sid Gelino from IT is here to answer them.
I actually have a question on the Myrtle Viaduct work.
Okay.
Is it everybody's expectation that all of the relocating necessary to start that in a timely fashion will have been done on the date you intend to start?
Yes, that is our expectation. The project is on track. The staff summary in your books relates specifically to the house that had the kitchen on the back, which was sort of our hairiest
Right.
challenge. In that case, there will be a friendly condemnation for a permanent acquisition. In all other cases, it will be temporary.
Friendly unless you want to do some cooking. Yeah.
In all other cases, it's temporary as anticipated, and we've had great cooperation from all the residents in the area. Next, we have implementation merely of capital program amendment that the board adopted last month. This is contingent on CPRB approval, which is expected for the end of the month. This is to authorize us to enter into a funding agreement with ESD so that we can actually start advancing funds. Sorry, it was a run-on sentence, I think, but this is a funding agreement with ESD to implement the capital program amendment that the board adopted last month. It's contingent on CPRB approval, which is expected by the end of the month.
Specifically, it's the $100 million that was included in that. So,
Sorry, fair enough.
But no more than what was included.
that's right.
That's right. Okay, and finally, we have a minor item for a substation construction contract. So they're four. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble. Directly into it. There you go. Okay, I thought I was close. So in addition to the adoption of the disposition guidelines, we have the 4 items I've described, and I would ask for your approval.
We need a motion on, yeah. So, do I have a motion? All those in favor? Opposed? Can I get a motion to adjourn? Second. All those in favor? Thank you. Meeting's adjourned. I have to